Welcome to EDD 405, Module 5. We're excited to be here and we appreciate your attention and time. And we're going to present presentation skills in addition to what we've been doing before, platform skills. And then we're moving into group dynamics. Obviously, this all goes together. We just want to give you a little bit of the presenter internal stuff first before we start addressing the group.
Right. When the inside stuff is present, the group dynamics is a lot easier.
Correct. And we really want you to be able to take this out into the world in the way that will best help you in your career and your professional life. And with that, let's see what we're going to be doing this module. So we have how not to get shot.
Yeah, it's
Sorry.
maybe not the most grammatically functional, but it really is
It's kind
how
of a fun
to
way.
avoid getting shot.
Because I think that's so much of what creates the fear for people in public speaking is that they are anticipating the group doing something to them. So we're going to prevent that as much as possible by setting things up so that it's prepared, you're prepared.
Right.
Then we're going to work with what we call a split attention drill or multitasking, because as a presenter, as a leader, in many forms you have to pay attention to more than just your content,
Right.
which is important.
It's not the ideal situation. There may be times where you're actually speaking and someone in the front row is talking and you can actually hear what they say, and you need to be able to continue your thought in spite of that.
Yeah, right. Then we're going to talk about the difference between, we've used two words that signify a presenter and a consultant. The two different perspectives of this place of leadership in front of the room.
Right.
And we'll go into detail about that.
And then what things do you need to attend to prior to the presentation?
Right, so that you get the lay of the land, so to speak. All of the variables that you can be prepared for are there. Then you only have to greet your audience and take care of the things of the day.
And then identifying group values. And we'll do more of this in the next module, a little bit more. But this is the beginning part of how do you identify the culture, in a sense, or
Yeah.
the spirit, the intent of the group that you're going to be presenting to.
And so that you can fine-tune your content in a way that audience in front of you will most readily receive it.
Right.
Then barometers. And just like a barometer in our weather stations, it gives us an anticipation of what's coming. You know, if the barometer is a certain level where it gets to
Like
where
if the barometer drops, it's going to storm.
it's going to
right?
storm, or if it goes up or down. So barometers are those people in your group that you utilize as signals for moving faster, slower. and
Like
so on.
where something's going to end up because
Yeah.
it's on its way.
Yeah.
And then giving compliments. And it's a concept that sounds like it would be very simple and easy. The challenge becomes, who are you complimenting and how do you want them to perceive the compliment?
Yes, and we talked a little bit about assigning attributes. It's along the same lines of how do you want to send that message of appreciation, acknowledgement in order to move the project forward.
Right.
Yep. So let's start with how not to get shot. Right?
The first one is go visual.
Right. Which means we're going to have our visual here.
And you notice how Marilyn did that, once again, because we've talked about it in the presentation. Her eyes led you to where she wanted you to go. So the tendency is to follow someone's eyes, so she did it very coordinated. Hand-eye coordination, hand-eye movement.
Cool. I didn't realize that.
You did.
All right, so the reason we want to go visual is it stabilizes your information, right? And notice it's okay for you to look at me, I'm just referencing. And so if there's a discussion, it's a way to go third point, and if someone says, well, can't we talk about climate change, and we're going to look on our list and say, well, not today, it's not on our agenda.
I don't see it on the agenda, so.
Right, so it can become a third point for you. It's also wonderful for the more auditory kinesthetic people in your group, because as a visual, if you say it once, they may or may not be external to you to get it. So it gives them a chance to catch up if they were internally thinking about something, to be able to be caught up with where you are, because it creates a safety.
Right.
People say, oh, okay, I know where we are on the list.
Right. Well, and the other part of that is when you can go visual, not only with the agenda for the day, it's also, going back to the presupposition from a long time ago, communication is redundant. We're communicating in all systems at some level.
Yes.
And by going visual, the auditories and the auditory kinesthetics are going to have an easier time making sense out of something at a quicker rate if we attach a visual to it. They have to do less feeling, less repeating.
Right. So for you, notice obviously we're here presenting visually and auditorily. We have our slides that you get to have as a download. You also have a manual that has even more detail in it. So you have 3 opportunities for visual in order to enhance your learning for our topic. And that it just deepens the ability for someone to get it in the system that they best, more readily can receive it. Right? So.
Did go back.
Pardon me. Oh, I went too fast. Yeah. Sorry.
That's all right.
I'm getting it off to the side, right?
When I did the slides, I didn't number them. So we'll gesture. So after go visual, get it off to the side. Okay.
So it, from my perspective, is anything that would contaminate the space here. Something you might want to say, that was a really good topic, and we're going to take that later and set it aside. So any way to decontaminate and get off to the side, it can be either a 3rd point or a 4th point, as you've learned already in your gestures.
And we'll give you a little demonstration of that real quick, how if I'm an employer and there's negative news, say, about Marilyn's attendance, okay?
Or you could be the coach.
I could be a coach.
The negative news about attendance.
Okay. Okay. Coaches don't necessarily want to get it off to the side.
Oh, okay.
Coaches, it would depend. So I'm going to go back to, it will depend on the coach, it will depend on the culture of the team, the organization, whether you need to get something off to the side or not. So your judgment and your familiarity is going to make a difference in that. So what we're going to do is we're going to demonstrate how it's useful to have something off to the side and to go visual, right? So we'll make it about sales.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So it's good to see you. Did you have a good weekend?
I did.
Good. Good. So all is well.
Yes.
All right. So there's something we need to talk about in service of the job, and it has to do with performance in sales.
Okay.
As you can see, the list of all the sales, and I see a big downturn in how the results are, numbers-wise.
Well, that's not my fault.
And it is the report. Now, if there's something happening going on that you'd like to share with me that we can negotiate, is there any I can be of service in helping you?
Well, part of that was I was off on vacation that week, and then George was supposed to be covering for me. So obviously George didn't. You can see my standards go on here, and then it drops that week. So it actually was something that we need to talk to George about.
Okay. It shows that it's your responsibility, and whether George was there or not, numbers are the numbers. Now, I'm certainly willing to work with you on this, and it's just a point of reference. So something needs to be done about that.
Okay.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right, thanks. All right. So what we're demonstrating is anything that is negative or bad news, I do not want to be attached to it. You'll notice that as long as we're talking about it, I'm not pointing here and looking at Marilyn. I'm pointing here and looking at it. It's the issue. It's the report. It is a thing. So I'm not going to contaminate relationship with topic or problem. All right. So, and then when I drop this a little bit and I turn to Marilyn, I'll use a gesture of connecting. I'll say, is there any way I can help you? Right. So it'll be palm up. It'll be soft hand. It won't be like this. It'll be
without the breathing.
Right, the breathing, and it's personal now. Now it's relationship. As soon as it goes back to it, and you see even Marilyn, just in her instinct, she referred back to where the subject was. It was over there. Put it back. Right. Yeah. So it's a way of keeping something off to the side, not becoming attached to it, and it is the challenge of the problem. Now, on the other hand, what if there's good news? Okay, so this time it's good news. So I'm still going to use my psychogeography to a point, and I'm going to introduce Marilyn. So there's something I'd like to talk to you about in service of the company. So there's some wonderful news here. You can see the sales just skyrocketed. Just an amazing month for you. So that's good news. right?
So now, I'm seeing the good news, but I'm seeing his face attached to it, which makes him be a good guy.
Right. So if it's good news, I want to be connected to it and close to it. So I can still address it or introduce it here, but then I'm going to bring it here in the relationship. So now we're relating. It's this gesture again, and this is the good news, has more of a chance of being connected to me. So
And to our relationship.
right. So when we talk about get it off to the side, getting it off to the side is creating a 3-point. So that, because we only have 1 point, which is self, inside, we have 2 point, which is between two people, and if there's negative news, it's either going to, and there's no 3 point, it's going to go here or here. We want negativity to be able to be introduced and referenced outside of relationship.
Yes. Right. And as you're presenting to a group, get it off to the side would be similarly if someone was bringing up irrelevant questions or they're constantly wanting to teach from the floor or something like that. Those are the things you want to also step away from. Rather than going towards that person, you're going to want to step away from it so that you have space to connect with the group, and that person, wherever they are in the group, you move your platforms, you move yourself on the platform to put the group between you and them, and we'll do more of that in the group dynamic part we're going to. So
getting it off to the side is a useful skill, and once you practice it, you can also bring it back.
Yeah, and when I'm doing one-on-one, I was working with a couple yesterday. I use my flip charts on the wall and I write on it there so that I can keep referencing either their goal or their challenge or whatever it is we're talking about. It's not attached to me, so I sit between the two of them. So I'm mediating and being equally interested in each side, so to speak. And yet we need to establish the goal first, and then I will set it up onto the flip chart on the wall so I can keep coming back to that. So
Right.
It stabilizes. It's an anchor, spatial location for where we're going and what we
Well,
want.
and in a case that has possibility of friction, like a couple, having something written up here on a flip chart, if somebody starts going off and says, okay, remember, we talked about this, and this, and I don't see who didn't do the dishes on there. And then you stop, wait, give them a chance to breathe, take a breath, turn around, and start again. But you always have that reference, so going visual and getting it off to the side is useful in many ways.
And this is part of your psychogeography in setting up your office. I generally will put the goal, if I'm working with two people here, and this is their future. I use this wall of my office to put the flip chart on, so we're constantly going towards the goal. I'm not attached to it if it happens to be negative stuff. And I will oftentimes say, well, we're going to leave that because that's already happened. We'll learn from it. However, this is where we're going. So I do set up my psychogeography space to match how their brain more easily receives the information.
Right.
Yep. So, okay, so our next point. Oops,
Well,
I
we'll
just did it
is-
again. Lead the listener with your eyes.
It's all on one chart,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
So, and we've talked about that before, the eye-hand coordination or movement.
Right.
And it's the same thing. So it helps the listener know where to direct their attention.
Yes. And we know that cliche of if you're looking up and pretty soon everybody's looking up with you to see what's up there. It's that sense of our eyes tend to point to the focus of attention. There's a Hawaiian huna saying that says, where your attention goes, that's where the energy flows. So where our eyes go is where we're paying attention generally.
Right.
And so we're going to be using, that's how we can connect with different portions of the group, is where the eyes are going.
And then
Sorry.
sorry, I should have numbered them up.
Yes, okay. Use observer position.
So and hopefully you could see that in the demonstration I gave with Marilyn with the feedback, is the report says, and I said not to say, I'm telling you your sales are down. The report says, right? And it shows. So it's an observer position. So I have self, observer, other. And so I'm keeping that very clean. And then when I let go of that, now I can talk relationship again.
Right. And so in other words, if I say, okay, as a group, I want you to do this, they're doing it for me. My sense is I want the group to do it for them and each of them individually. So it will really matter how much you practice this work so that you can have the results that you want. It's not, I want you to do it because I said so or because it's for me.
Right.
Right? So
Yeah.
eliminating the I and my.
It's time for it to change.
There we go. Okay. So we are going to separate the problem from the solution. And that's, I sort of just demonstrated. I said I put the goal, which would be our solution, where we're going, on the wall, and I put the problem outside of the two people sitting there here, on my audience.
Once again, Marilyn's gestures are very good. You notice what she did? She said the problem, and it's almost like there's something there with weight. I mean, it exists, and she sets it out there, and then she curls her fingers on the way back. So it's actually, okay, here's the goal, that's the problem, we're going to leave it out there. Right? So it's actually like you're putting something there, taking your fingers off of it, and coming back. And I'm going to ask Marilyn to do that one more time. Watch how natural it is, and notice your response. It's as if there is a problem there, she actually sets it out there.
Yeah. So I have my team or my couple or the group I'm working with. We want to first stabilize where we're going. What is it we want to have as a result? Then we take the problem, whatever that might be, identify it, and set it off to the side so we know that's what we want to move away from and learn from, and leave it over there. We don't want it to contaminate our moving forward space.
I'm going to be really transparent in this and show you again an excellent thing that Marilyn did with her gestures. When she put it, and I'm going to assume the problem, you're not part of it here, so I'm going this direction. So and the problem, and she put it over here. Now she kept, and we talked about frozen hand gesture and double frozen hand gesture. She kept this, and she said over there. So what it's doing is it's not only stabilizing it off to the side, it's moving it away. So it's like here, over here, she continues talking, holding it, and then and that's over there, we're not going to address that at this point. So it's another distinction. Yeah, it's an extra dissociation that puts it even further away because she's holding this side of it. She can do that. Now when she comes back, it's even further away than it would have been.
Right. And this is that economy of movement so that your gestures are supporting your message. I didn't even realize I was doing that, except I remember when I was first learning this work, I practiced to install that in my own neurology so it would just happen automatically, which is the fun of getting congruent. Right?
Yeah. Well,
we can't not send our message.
There are skills that you can practice. A lot of it, like what we mentioned with improvisational work, it's if there's something you throw it away. I mean, you can actually throw it away and it's gone, right? But you can't go like this and then bring it back. Then it's like a yo-yo,
that's a yo-yo.
right? So you throw it, your fingers curl. It's like, okay, it's gone, right? So
I used one concept where I talked to people about a boomerang, and I said, we want to eliminate that boomerang effect. So I'm taking when you throw a boomerang, I've always thrown it this way. It could be a frisbee as well.
A frisbee might work.
Yeah.
I think a boomerang, I don't know how to throw a boomerang really.
I think, I've done it the same way, where it's going out there. So I use that when I talk about people who say, well, I want to fix them and then I'll be okay. And we want to eliminate that middleman in order for this person to have all the resources that they need.
Right.
Yeah. So our gestures they're not intended in any way to distract, just to support a message. And some people more naturally use the gestures, others like Al will use more just his visual looking and some gestures. So use your own style. However, if you're going to use gestures, we don't want this sort of distracting movements.
Right. This sends a message like I can't make up my mind. Right?
Yeah, good. So we separate the problem from the solution or the resolution, and we're going to intentionally use our credible and approachable voice patterns so that when I'm sending information, that's credible. When I'm approaching and gathering information and encouraging, and again, I have my clients with this couple I worked with yesterday. It's very interesting when you work with two people, oftentimes they will, when you ask each of them what they want, they both wanted the same thing. They wanted to be heard and appreciated. Neither one was getting that feeling from their partner. Well, we started out with requests and proposals. And as we've taught you that if you're making a request, you want to first of all put the benefit and the information, the facts, or the relationship and the task, but whichever way you want to present it, depending on your person that you're presenting to.
Covering both hemispheric potentials.
Right. And so I had gotten the female side of the team to at least create the two sides. At first it was just, I want you to do this. It was just this credible, with no effect in the face. It was just like she was angry and asking for something. So that's not going to be very congruent or successful. And you could see the non-breathing of the partner as she was role-playing it. So just to get her to use the approachable voice, the partner took a breath, his face softened. He said, well, of course, sweetheart. Just shifting this voice pattern, it shifted her from that left hemisphere logical linear, just get it done, to this is my partner. I really need to be respectful of him.
Okay. Once again, going back to the demonstration with Marilyn as the employee and the report, the sales report here, and hopefully you can go back and rewind this and look at it and verify, okay, so there's a problem. Sales have gone down. So
Right.
it's credible. Now, I'm on your side. I want this to work, right? And this has to change.
Right.
All right. So what I'm doing is I'm being credible where credible is necessary.
Yes.
But I'm taking a slight step, hesitation back, moving the paper and say, okay, and then doing the gesture with more of an approachable, I want this to work too, right?
Right.
So,
Okay. And then we want to intentionally separate the problem from relationship as well.
right, which is in a sense the same thing, but one can be a solution and there may not be a solution to a problem, and that's where you have to make sure that you honor the relationship side.
Well, and it's very different, the experience from saying, when you have two people that are not able to move forward, is to say, you should.
Mhm.
That's a very different experience. You should da-da-da-da-da, as opposed to, I would really like it if you could.
Mhm.
This is a case where in a couple, in a personal relationship, it's important for them to state it, what the benefit is. I would really like your help in doing da-da-da, rather than you should do it. Total different response from the other side. They're smiling.
I just thought of two responses. One is, then you know how to do it. And the other is a little more lighthearted, so.
Yeah.
I still may not do it, but at least it maintains relationship, so.
Right, and so that's our goal. All right. Another on how not to get shot is to use specific evidence and behavioral descriptions rather than judgments and mind reading, right? So you'll hear, if I'm addressing a group and I say, I know all of you are hungry for lunch right now.
Right.
Some people may not be.
And if you say all of them, you lose credibility with someone who is not.
Yeah, or you get the opposites who go, I'm not, I would rather just plow through, and then now you've got dissension in the group.
Right.
So you say, some of you may want to go to lunch now, some of you may want to finish up the project you're working on so we can divide up and everyone will be back here by 2 o'clock.
Mhm.
Or you can say, we are going to go to lunch now because some of you would like to nurture yourselves and get back on track so we can think more clearly, so we'll all take a break.
Right.
So instead of everyone or I know, or it's that sense of my mind reading, my entire group, I'm getting a sense of the group, and then I say, well, some people may have some questions about this. And so if there are some questions, this is the perfect time to ask the question so we can get some clarity to move forward.
Well, and you can, once again, using your gestures as well, you say, now some people are ready for lunch. So you're indicating on the camera, you say, okay, so some people are ready for lunch, right? And so by this, you're
Non-verbally
you're
encourage
gesturing
people, yeah.
the question, who is ready for lunch?
And you'll get
So-
some responses.
And by the same token, you can use your gesture. So some people are ready for lunch, right?
Right.
So this means it's not yet.
Not
It's-
yet, yeah.
Right. So
I'm acknowledging it, and we're going to finish.
right.
Yeah.
So there's many things you can do with your gestures to support or influence the verbal statement.
The direction, right? So if I were to say, well, no one's getting this material right now, so we're going to have to go over it again. The one or two people in the group who might really be grasping it are going to be insulted.
Well, not only insulted, because I agree with you, there's a chance that they might, here's the person in the position of credibility that says I'm not getting it. What am I missing? Now they're reverting back and they're missing what's coming up next.
Instead of saying, well, some of you may want to review, and so we have it here on the flip chart, and you have it in your manual. Take a minute on the break to read over it, and then if you still have questions, when you come back, we'll answer.
Right. So
it's allowing people to know it's okay to have questions if it's okay with you.
Mhm.
And again, when we get into presenter consultant, you'll see where the difference between when you may have a lot of questions and more collaborative work and when you are just giving a message.
Right.
Right, good. So, ready?
Mhm.
paying attention to the psychogeography, we started to allude to that already. So it's just, again, setting up your environment. What is going to make people most comfortable, right? And noticing along the way. And when we say align with...
Okay, so if Marilyn and I are greeting, so just because we approach each other in a face-to-face way. So if we approach each other, we can hi.
Hi, it's good to see you.
So I can just kind of casually take a step to the side, so I'm not...
He's just slightly turned his shoulders so we have a little more openness.
And my left foot is pointed out just slightly, so there's an openness there. So it doesn't mean we can't ever be, okay, go meet somebody and then, rigid and stiff. You just say, how you doing?
Yeah.
So how's things going? So you can be open, and that's a part of the psychogeography, especially when you're working with someone and you want, notice if I'm using the get it off to the side technique, and if I'm facing her and I try to get it off to the side,
It's much more awkward. We're still squared off as a confrontation.
Very easy for her not to pay attention to this, right? So.
And if you're seated, you can turn in your chair, or hopefully, I like to use a swivel chair, but if not, you can at least move in your seat to just open those shoulders slightly. So if you are in an interview and you are at a desk where you are squared off with someone, you can just slightly turn. It gives a little more softness. It's like when we take a photograph, they say don't do a mug shot, just straight on, have a little bit of a head tilt, have turn kind of thing to give a little more interest. Remember that we're going to be keeping our breathing deep and low for permission. So as we're presenting, it's okay to get excited and yet keep the breath.
Mm-hmm. Right. And then keeping your outcome in mind, focus on keeping yourself from being distracted by another agenda. Some agendas can be from outside sources. Some agendas can be within the room. Somebody may have a personal agenda to prove that they're smarter than somebody else. It could be a vendetta against the topic. It could be, I don't want to be here. They could be the prisoner. There's any number of agendas that can enter into it. If you remember to stay focused on it, you're less likely to get taken off track and losing the dynamic of the group. One of the things that you've probably seen many times is when there's humor. Now, humor is a wonderful thing. If humor goes too far, it's really difficult to get a group back on track. If you do one or maybe two funny things in a row, that's great. If you start doing too many, now you're a comedian instead of a presenter or a consultant.
And your humor has to have relevance to the topic.
Right, and it has to be respectful.
Right, and so we use it to bond a group, because as we laugh together, our breath is similar. Mm-hmm. We use it to lighten the situation. We use it to tell a story that has a bit of a twist to it.
Which, if that's the intent, now you're not off on a different agenda. If it's a serious topic and something funny about the serious comes up and there's laughter about it, now that's off direction. It doesn't hurt as long as we're able to get back on direction. If the task is group bonding and humor is a useful thing, now you're no longer off task or off agenda.
Yeah.
So.
I was just in a corporate meeting the other day with my colleague and I and the CEO we're working with, and there's another employee that we're working with doing business meetings. And we needed to change the dynamic of the meeting. So we agreed, because this person tends to easily want to go on, wander off and tell a story and not stay on topic. And we really want to get some work done. So we agreed amongst the three of us, at any moment, one of us could say, and now moving on or getting back on track. And that would mean your story might be great, but you know what, cut it off and let's get back on track. So that we are not the ones that are digressing in addition to the digression of the person we're working with.
Right.
Because that's how we sort of wander down a different path, and then we're going over there instead of where we want to go. And I'm sure most of you will understand that already.
And then predicting resistance or other negativity. If you can predict something, you have more influence over it. If you're there and some people don't want to be there and you acknowledge it, you're predicting it. So once again, go back to some of you. Now, and you can even use your spatial anchors. I won't do the walking for the stationing, but you can basically say, okay, some of us want to be here, some of us may not know, and other people may not want to be. The fact is, we have a lot of great information, and we're going to bring it all together so that it's useful. Now, what I'm doing is I'm addressing, yeah, I get it, some people don't want to be here. And in doing that, I'm using a gesture here that says some people, other people, and there are even others. And then I've marked out the 3 spots. And then I say, and what we're going to do is we're going to bring it all together so that we get something useful. So it's, in a sense, it's
useful for
inclusive.
them,
Right.
not just because we said so. Yeah. And I think that also sometimes something may happen in the world that creates a dynamic. I know one day I arrived at a training and the room was locked and we couldn't get into the room. The hotel hadn't given us access. So we got creative and we went down to the patio and we started out by the pool until someone who was an assistant could go get the room undone and so on. So I was again utilizing that, something that could have been a panic or a flustered or oh my gosh, it was like, okay, we still are going to meet, we just changed the venue.
Right.
And then we'll get back on track.
So if there's a high probability of a negative topic, you go to a pre-selected place on the platform, or you have a way of addressing it.
Or gesturing.
Right. And you openly address the topic. All right. Now, what if it's something that might come up? All right. It could be, there may be a baseball strike. All right. So maybe that's not really the topic, but if you're talking to baseball players, they may want to bring it up in that meeting. So what you do is somewhere on a slide, a notepad, a flip chart, you put the information visually. And if the topic comes up, okay, and then you go to it, whether it's a flip chart or you can punch
pull out something or push this, yeah.
Okay, having it on a piece of paper even. Okay, as you can see, we recognize that. Now, that's something we can talk about, and we're going to do it at the end of the day.
Well, I have a perfect example. I just visited family members this week, and I got to go see my grandkids' martial arts class, right? And my daughter-in-law told me the story that the instructors had gone to Korea for their I think the main instructor was getting a 7th degree black belt, and the whole team was competing, and the families were with them, and they were all on the airplane that had just hit the seawall at San Francisco Airport.
So timing-wise, it was
just
Asiana flight that went from Korea to San Francisco, and it was a Boeing 777.
Right.
So for one reason or another, so that was that's the recently that she's talking about.
Right. So I know in years hence this will be not recent, but this was just a great example of an outside event that's going to now color what's happening when this sensei got back to his studio. So 2 days later he was teaching, and he made a specific spot. He said, I understand most of you want to hear, not all of you, but most of you or some of you may want to hear about our trip to Korea and about that airplane thing. So he kind of dismissed it.
It was an airplane thing instead of a wreck, a crash, or...
Right. And so he said, so on Wednesday at 4 o'clock, anyone who would like to ask questions, we're going to have a special meeting to talk about our trip. So that meant he could tell them about their competition, he could tell them all kinds of things, and if they still had questions about the airplane thing, they could ask then. So it cleaned the classroom, so not everybody was then, they could be satisfied with the information they may want to have, but it wasn't going to contaminate every single class and have to explain over and over and over. And I thought that was a beautiful way of handling it, because the children were concerned with their teacher, their leader, and is everybody okay, and so on, and they were thankfully okay.
It's addressing the elephant in the living room and telling the elephant to go outside until we're ready for you.
I like that, yeah.
So.
Okay.
And then there's one other concept.
It was about the
teenagers.
Yes.
Right. Okay, there's another concept that's not on the slides. It is in your handouts. And that's about using interpretive words and when to use them.
And Al calls them interpretive words, I would call them conceptual words.
Yeah.
But if you think you're going to be accused of something, or there's a word going to come up that you would like to have ownership of rather than giving someone else, that you expect, like if you reprimand a teenager.
Okay, so what happens if the teenager is out with the car an hour after they're supposed to be home? And so eventually you're going to have to talk to them. Timing, it's a whole different part of group dynamics, but timing is essential, and getting it off to the side so it's not confrontational. One good option is in the car where you're taking them somewhere, they want to be. So it's, you know that we need to talk about this thing. So, and so you're driving, so you can focus out here. And what, if you can think about it, what is the biggest thing that the teenager is going to push back with? What word is a teenager going to use to support their argument?
Well,
It's gonna be-
from my perspective, I've often, as having had teenagers, is you don't trust me.
Right. So trust is going to be, this is the predicting, trust is probably going to be the operative dynamic in the conversation. The person who brings it up first controls it. So if I'm the parent and I just simply say, we need to talk about this, and I want you to know it's not about trust. Now,
Or that I trust you to make good decisions.
you know,
And
whatever.
we're going to talk about how you make those decisions really well. 'Cause you-
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And if I bring up the word, and okay, so I said, and it's not, and I want you to understand, it's not about whether I trust you or not.
Yes.
So she now can't,
Now I can't use that.
if she uses it, go ahead, so
Well,
you don't trust me.
you don't trust me.
Okay, remember, I've always already identified, and I can say, actually, hopefully I would say, we've already identified, it's not about trust.
Right, so he owns that. It no longer becomes my hiding place or my escape.
Right. So if something might come up, you have a place where you've addressed it, and if there's a word that may, it can be a judgment word, it can be a nominalization, it can be a value,
Yeah.
it can be any number of things. If you're the one to bring it up, you have control of the depth and duration of the topic.
Right, much more than if you allow yourself to get backed into a corner or blindsided because someone else uses it first.
Right.
So we hope you'll find more about this in your manual. And we're going to pause here and we'll come back in a moment.